Okay, in this section we will present about the role of psycholinguistics in language learning and teaching, the correlation between psycholinguistics and ELT, English learning teaching. Okay, before that we will introduce ourselves. The first is Nikmatul Hidayani, second is Gladysia Idolani, the third is Adelia Yulita, and then the last is Sefiana Bintari. Okay, go to, the topic review of psycholinguistics. There are three parts. There is psycholinguistics is an integration of two disciplines. There are psychology and linguistic. Psychology is the study of mind and behavior. Linguistic is the study of language. So in general, psycholinguistic uh, can be defined as the study of mind and language. It is concerned with the relationship between the human mind and the language as it examines the process that occur in brain while producing and perceiving language. And then the review of literature. Psycholinguistic has um, psycholinguistic has developed rapidly and expanded into several subdisciplines as cited in Chair 2015 below. The first is theoretical psycholinguistics. It focuses on theories of language that relating to human mental process in language, such as phonetic, diction, syntax, design, discourse, and intonation. Second is developmental psycholinguistics. It is related to the language acquisition, both first language acquisition and second language acquisition. And the third is social psycholinguistic relate to the social aspect of language, including social identity. The fourth, educational psycholinguistic discuss general aspect of formal education at school, including the role of language in teaching reading, teaching proficiency, and then etc. And then fifth is neuropsycholinguistic, focus on the relationship between language production and the human brain. The sixth, experimental psycholinguistic covered an experiment in all language production and language activities and etc. The seventh is applied psycholinguistic, concerned with the application of the finding of six sub-disciplines of psycholinguistic explained before it in certain areas that require it, including psychology, linguistic, language learning, and etc. And then the next is will be explained by Gladysia Idolani.
Next, about language learning and language acquisition. Chair 20 and 50 explain that term language learning is used because some experts believe that second language can be mastered by learning the language intentionally and consciously. This is different from the first language and mother tongue, which is acquired naturally and unconsciously without a formal setting. Jadi menurut Chair ini tadi bahwa bahasa kedua itu lebih digunakan secara sadar atau sengaja. Sedangkan bahasa kedua atau bahasa ibu itu lebih alami. Jadi sudah ditentukan sejak dari awal. Dan bisa dijelaskan bahwa ada dua, yaitu bahasa secara formal dan natural. Okay, next.
This section will be explained by Nikmatul Hidayani.
Okay, for the next factor affecting language learning. Some students learn a new language more quickly and easily than others. This fact related to the crucial factor influencing success that are largely beyond the control of the learner. This makes, like Bond and Spada 2006, say that there are several factors that can affect language. For the one, intelligence. We can know from birth that humans have their own intelligence. To develop it, they usually to do a test that is in school. For the second, aptitude. The aptitude of a person, for example, a person does not realize that he or she is able to learn quickly. And for the third, learning style. This is very influential in learning the language because learning styles are needed to describe the nature, habit, and preferred ways to absorb, process, and store new information and skills. And for the fourth, personality. It is also important in language learning. It aims to determine a person's characteristics such as a self-esteem, empathy, dominance, talkativeness, and responsive. And for the five, motivation, there is intrinsic and extrinsic. Motivation intrinsic can be seen when someone practices to speak English and Indonesian or can be called a mix. This will make a person feel motivated from within himself to learn the language. For the motivation extrinsic, this is very important for an educator to encourage students to be more enthusiastic about learning languages, can be trained by communicating using the language when delivering explanation in the classroom. And then culture and status. There is some evidence that students in situations where then our culture scores lower status than culture in which they learn the language made slower progress. Social factors at a more general level can influence motivation, attitudes, and language learning success. One of these factors is social dynamics or power relations between language. And for the last, age. In learning a second language greatly distinguishes the age of children and adults in learning a second language in certain aspect such as phonology, morphology, and syntax. And for the next,
This
Next,
explanation will be explanation by Gladys.
yes, thank you. Next, about approach and method. Approach refer to theories about the nature of language and language learning, serving as the source of practice and principle in language teaching. Next, about method is the principle realis realisa realization of an approach. The organizers of a method have arrived at decisions about types of activities, roles of teachers and learners, the kinds of material which will be helpful, and some model of syllabus organization.
Next will be explanation by Adele.
Okay, thank you. Psycholinguistic approach. Students always involve three domains of psycholinguistics, which are cognitive, affective, and psychomotor, used for skills listening, reading, speaking, and writing. The psycholinguistic approach focuses upon what humans know when they talk and how they acquire that knowledge and also how that knowledge is put to use. This means that developmentally appropriate instruction must be considered in language learning. Next slide. According to the Meyerzen 2004, the following are some of the benefits of psycholinguistic theory in language learning and teaching related to the four skills. The first is psycholinguistic approach and listening skill. In teaching listening, there are intrinsic and extrinsic difficulties that should be overcome in order to reach a highly qualified listening activity. Psycholinguistics can help to reduce these difficulties. Teacher can prepare a listening text with topic that is familiar for students. Teacher also minds about the reading speed and the noise of environment. Moreover, the teacher can increase student interest and motivation by designing an interesting and comfortable class. The second is psycholinguistic approach and reading skill. Psycholinguistic approach resort to the text-based approach as a case of bottom-up processing and top-down processing. Bottom-up processing happens when someone tries to understand language by looking at individual meanings or grammatical characteristics to trying to understand the whole text, while top-down processing of language happens when someone uses background information to predict the meaning of language. This theory emphasizes that the understand the meaning of a text essentially rests on the prior knowledge of students. The third is psycholinguistic approach and writing skill. Psycholinguistic approach indicate that there are mistakes in writing caused by agraphia, which must be treated properly. Psycholinguistic helps to find interesting topic to write and serve to decrease the level of the difficulties in writing. It helps to specify the writing levels and writing types too. The fourth is psycholinguistic approach and speaking skill. Psycholinguistic approach has a vocabulary control of teaching speaking skill. Psycholinguistic explain that personality like introvert and extrovert student affect student performance in language learning. Speaking defects like voice disorders, stuttering, and disarticulation are also psychological in origin caused by personality factor. Those with the knowledge, teacher can apply the appropriate techniques to teach speaking skills by considering the condition of the learner and find interesting topic to be discussed in speaking class.
Okay, for the next explanation will be explained by me. Okay, language teaching methods of psycholinguistic approach. There's two part of uh, terms. An approach in language teaching consists of theories of the nature of language and the theories of language learning. A method of language teaching can be well understood if its fundamental theories are clearly understood. Fundamental theories in developing language teaching method are divided into two main theories, the theory of language and the theory of language learning. And then beside the theory of language, the developing of language teaching method is also based on the theory of language learning that relate to two main questions. The first is what cognitive process that involved in language learning, and then the second is what conditions are needed to reach a high quality of language learning activity. Psycholinguistics has clearly answered these two questions. Some methods which were developed based on psycholinguistic approach are described as following: Haras and Andika 2009. The first is natural method. This method is developed by Tracy D. Terrell. This method believes that language learning is a reproduction of the way humans naturally acquire their native language. This method rejects early methods such as audiolingual method. Psycholinguistic principles in language learning according this method are as following. A. Language mastery relies on learning language skill in natural context and less on conscious learning of grammatical rules. B. Learning a language is an effort to develop communicative competence. the ability to understand the speech of native speaker and native speaker understand the learner's speech without any error which can interfere with meaning. C. Comprehension is primary than production. D. The model that underlies this method is five monitors theory. The first is acquisition learning hypothesis. Second, natural order hypothesis. Third is monitor hypothesis. Fourth, feedback hypothesis. The fifth, affective filter hypothesis. And then the second is total physical response method. This method is developed by psychologists from San Jose State College, United States, James G. Asher, 1966. Psycholinguistic principles in language learning according to this method are as following. A. Language competence will improve significantly by involving kinesthetic sensory system in language learning. This relates to the fact the children are given utterance that require them to move physically. The B is comprehension is primary rather than speech production. Students are directed to achieve comprehension competence before they try to speak or write. Okay, that's all of our explanation about our topic. So thank you for listening until the end. Okay, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.